If you ever have difficulties with stiffness or pain in your foot, today we're going to be going through some active exercises that can start to help out with that. So the first exercise that we're going to go through today, or really the first movement that we're going to go through today, is starting to work on the ability to open up the toes and close the toes together. So just like our hand, our foot has the ability and our toes have the ability to spread apart and pull together. A lot of times we never think about that and we never practice that because our feet are kept away in our shoes all day. Working on these can actually be awesome for balance. They can help a lot with a lot of the strength and stability kind of going up the leg. And so it's worth our time to practice and get a little bit more in touch with some of those muscles. So what that looks like is with our foot, you basically can try to spread the toes apart as far as you can. So we're using these muscles on the side of our foot to spread those toes apart, and then you can start to bring them together. So when I'm doing this, usually what I'll do is I'll set a timer or I'll look at the clock and take a minute to 2 minutes just to kind of practice spreading and closing those toes together. It's not really worth it to go for reps. A lot of times people can either do this really easily or they can't at all. And so saying to do 10 reps of that when someone can't do that gets to be a very long, painful struggle. If you're unable to get much movement in your toes, one thing that you can do to start off with that can be really helpful is actually just putting a little bit of pressure against your big toe. So if my big toe was my hand, I'm putting pressure against that big toe to try and open it up. So basically giving me that pressure kind of guides the muscles to push against that finger basically. And so it can help to start just teach you how to use those muscles a little bit better. You can do the same thing on the pinky side where you're trying to direct where that toe is kind of pushing. And so that can sometimes help you wake up those toes a little bit more too and get a little bit more in touch with those muscles. Everyone has the ability to contract those muscles. It just takes practice. And so taking time out of your day, each day or a couple times a week, you should start to notice you get a little bit more control over that area. The next movement that we can do is bringing the toes up and down. So bringing the toes into flexion and extension. What that looks like is bringing the toes kind of like up and off the ground and then pushing them down into the ground. One drill or one exercise you can try is just lifting that big toe up all by itself. So pulling that big toe off the ground, leaving the rest of the toes on the ground, and then switching that up to the opposite. So pushing that big toe down to the ground and then lifting the little toes off. Same as before, I'll usually kind of set a time for myself to practice this back and forth. Becomes a little bit less frustrating, and then when that time's up, if you're really struggling, at least it has an endpoint. And same thing with this one. If you're having difficulties finding what muscles to use to do that, if you kind of provide yourself a little bit of resistance and force yourself to push up into that, that can be a little bit more helpful in trying to wake up some of those other muscles as well. The last little exercise or last little drill that we're going to go through today is practicing waking up some of those muscles that help to support our arch. So some of the muscles in the bottom of our foot that help to kind of bring our foot off the ground a little bit. When you do that, you can kind of get up into a standing position. And then a lot of times you can kind of cheat by using your hips a little bit, by rotating through your hips. So as best as you can, you're going to try to leave the hips relatively relaxed. From here though, what you'll do with your feet is you're going to think about grabbing the ground with your feet. So you're going to drive your big toes and your little toes into the ground. And when you do that, it's almost like you're grasping at the ground with your toes. You should start to feel the arches of your feet lift off the ground a little bit. So what you can do is maybe hold that contraction for a couple of seconds, 5 seconds, relax. Same thing, get back into that contraction, hold for a couple of seconds, feel that pull with your toes into the ground, and then relax. And then same as the other exercises, if you set yourself a timer, practice this for about a minute or 2 minutes, you should be able to feel those muscles on the bottom of your feet squeezing a little bit. Same thing with this one, if you need a little bit of guidance, sometimes if you throw a towel or something you can scrunch up on the ground into the ground, you might be able to wake up these muscles a little bit more. The idea here is that my toes aren't actually pulling in though, they're just kind of pushing that pressure into the ground, which creates that squeeze that kind of lifts the arch off the ground.